Melina wants to know, how do you cut as many images as you can on an 8.5 by 11 to save paper? Right, well, let's just put an image on here. So I've got an image here, and when I select go, I can change my material size here to 8.5 by 11, and then I can tell it how many copies I want, and then click apply and change back to 8.5 by 11, and I can keep doing that. It's going to keep changing to 12 by 12, but anyway, let's do that and then go to 8.5 by 11. So that's one way of doing it. And when you're at this screen, you can still move your images around, so you can actually get them closer if you want to by doing that. That's one way. The other way would be to perhaps use the set canvas option and make it, let me find the right canvas. I can never find this one. The basic canvas. For some reason I can never find that. But you select basic canvas and then you go to the canvas screen. That didn't quite work. I'm sure it's this one. Okay, so we want the rectangle square, and then you can actually make it a custom size. So you can make it 8.5 by 11, and you can just see on your screen there the white outline which shows you the canvas. Now that obviously doesn't cut, but then what you can do is you can just use that as a guide, and you can place your images where you want them. So if you wanted to duplicate this, or these could be all different images, just place those where you want them, however close you want them. And then once you've got all your images there and you've got them placed where you want them, just select them all and then click attach. Now if they were multi-layered images and they were all different colors, by selecting attach, they would all change to one color. So that's just something you need to be aware of. So does that help at all, Melina? Okay, Tiffany, so your design's too big to cut. It's just wording and you don't mind piecing the words together. How do you get it to cut the whole sentence one color by breaking it up word by word? I would type it all up, and then I would probably use slice to slice that into words. There are different other ways. Let's add some text. Says it is too big. Okay, so there's my word. One thing that you can do, I'll just get rid of the shadow. Now when you go into edit, you do have this option here which is isolate letters. Now you can click that and it will make every one of these its own object. So that's one way that you could do it. And then you could go through and individually just attach each word so that it cuts out correctly, like that. So that would be probably the easiest way to do it. Your other option would be, I'll undo that, would be to, once you've got your word, go in and insert a square, place that over one of your words, and then select that and your sentence and click slice. and then it would then slice that word out of the sentence. So there's your one word there, and then you would repeat that process for each of your other words. So again, put a square over a word, select that and the sentence, and click slice. And just keep doing that until you've sliced up your sentence. Does that help? Great. I thought maybe I could do the how to split a letter, or any image actually, doesn't have to be a letter. How to split it properly, because we quite often see split letters posted in the group, and people have gone to a lot of effort to do it, but they've made one fatal mistake when they've done it, and they haven't created enough space in the middle of the letter, and then when they've pulled the two pieces apart, the letter actually becomes kind of warped and it just doesn't look right. So what I thought I'd do is show you the wrong way first, so that you know what not to do. So what people are actually doing, so I'll just use the letter A, and we'll make that a capital, and I'll just stretch that out. Now I will get rid of, I'll show that shadow and then I'll delete it. So I'm going to make that a bit bigger. So what people are doing is they've got their letter, and then they're going in and grabbing their square, and they're resizing it because they want to split, say they want to split the A in half. So they're getting this rectangle and they're putting it in here, and they're thinking, okay, great, that's what I want, and I want to split it right there. So what they're doing is they're selecting it, and all these steps are kind of correct. There's just something else they need to be doing. So so what they do there is they then go in and they slice it, and they've now got their gap. So we'll pull those pieces out of the way. So there's their letter that's split, and that's fine, but they need to make a bigger gap in between. So what they've learnt to do is they've thrown another square in, and they cover up one half of it, select that and the letter, and then they slice again. So there's our two pieces, and that's great. They've now got they've got two sections that they can then pull apart. But what happens is, as they pull them apart, the letter doesn't line up anymore. So I'll just show you. I'm just going to put a rectangle in here and make it nice and skinny, and I'll rotate that so that it's the same angle as the letter, so that I can demonstrate this, what I mean. So when your letter's up here, it's all lined up nicely. But when you start pulling that letter apart to make more space in between, you can see that the lines no longer look right. So this bit here doesn't line up with this bit in here. So that happens because you've split it incorrectly. So what I'll show you now is how to split this correctly. So I'm just going to select all of this and delete it. And now I will do add text. I'll put my same letter in. Again, I'll go and delete the shadow. And what I'm going to do is I'll go into the edit panel here. I'm going to make the height of my letter 10 inches. And then for some reason, Design Space has this funny little bug that won't allow me to push the letter any higher than that using the mouse. So I need to go to the X and Y position, and I'll, whoops, 1 inch, not 10 inches. Okay, so now that's on my screen. So what I'll do now is insert my shape, which is a square, turn off the proportions, and what I need to do now is I need to decide how big of a gap I want between the two halves of the letter once it's sliced. So if I want a 1 inch gap in between, I know that this square has to be at least 1 inch. If I want 1 inch in between and I want the two horizontal bars, then I need to also add the amount of space that those two horizontal bars will take up. So I make my horizontal bars 1/4 inch, and if I want 1 inch in between the letter, that means I need 1 inch plus 2 lots of 1/4 inch. So I need this square to be 1.5 inches in height. So I'll change that over here. And then I look at how wide my letter is and whether I want my horizontal bars to be the same width or whether I want them to be wider. So I try and make mine just be a little bit wider. So what I'll do in this case is I'm going to make, so I'll go to I'll look at the side, the width of my letter at the moment, which is 11.5. And I'm going to make my bars just a little bit bigger than that now. Obviously 11.5 is as wide as you can go, and my letter's 11.3, so I'll make these 11.5 right here. So that's that. Now what I need to do is position this exactly where I want the slicing to happen. So some letters are easy to work out where to put it and some are difficult. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it right across where the bar of the A goes. So I'll move that there. I need to align this correctly. So I select the rectangle and the letter, and I'm going to align it horizontally. So I'm almost ready to slice at this point. But what I want to do now is add another square, and this one is actually going to be 1 inch. So I'll make that 1 inch height. It doesn't matter how wide it is, but it needs to be wider than this rectangle. So I'm going to make that one 12, and then I need to put that one over the top of this one. So once all my slicing's happened, you can see that this part up the top there is going to be the top bar, and this bit here is going to be the bottom bar. So that this is centered, or so that both the bars are going to be the correct size, I'm going to align this rectangle over this rectangle. So to do that, I'll select both of those, I'll go to align, and this time I'm going to, and I always get these two mixed up, but I'm pretty sure I need to go center vertically. So now I know that what I've got is equal space top and bottom. Right, so let's go back to the layers. I'm going to hide this smaller rectangle for now by clicking on the eye in the layers panel. I now go and I'm going to select this rectangle and my letter, and I'm going to weld. And that went really weird. No, it didn't. So there's my letter, and I'm not going to move anything because I don't. I want everything to stay where I had it. So there's my letter with that bar welded. Now I go back to the layers panel, unhide that rectangle, and that's why I didn't want to move this letter, because then the rectangle wouldn't have lined up. Now I can select all, and I can slice, and now I'm going to move these pieces out of the way, there's my split letter, and if I move this over here, you can see that in between the the top and the bottom bars, I now have 1 inch of space. So when you go to split it, work out exactly how much space you want in there, and just remember that that last bar has to be at least that. So that's how you correctly split a letter. So was that helpful at all? There's always right and wrong ways to do things, and there's always easy and hard ways to do things. So hopefully you found the easy way and the right way today. Okay, I'll go and see what I can find as far as questions. Can you somehow highlight the size you want to stay within? Thanks, Juniper. You would do that using the canvas that I showed earlier, Megan. So you would go to Set Canvas and select Blank Canvas, and then go to the Canvas panel and say how big you want it to be. So you would say you want it to be 6 by 6. You could do that, and then you would place your images within that area. But that's only a guide, so just remember that. How can you cut bigger than your mat? Okay, that's an easy one. Now I'm going to say Krizia, sorry if I'm mangling your name. You would use the slice feature. So if you've got let me delete, select all of this and get rid of it. And I'm going to go and just go back to blank canvas. What you would do is say I want I'm just going to go with a letter again. Say I want this letter to cut out at, let me get rid of that shadow. Say I want my letter to be well, bigger than a mat. So let's say I want it to be 15 inches wide. I better turn this off. Say I want it to be 15 inches wide by 20, I'll make it 30 inches in height. Now you're not going to obviously be able to see it all there, so what I would do is change the zoom so that I can see my whole letter. So at the moment this image or letter is 15 inches wide by 30 in height. Now if I want to cut that up, I need to slice it into pieces that will fit onto my mat. So if I'm using a 12 by 12 mat, I need to create a square that is the maximum size that can be cut on a 12 by 12 mat, which is 11.5 by 11.5. So if I put those measurements in there, I then go to layers and I'll duplicate that a few times, and then I'll take one, place it over the letter or image or whatever it is you're trying to create, cut larger than your mat. Select both of those and slice. And then move that out. So there's one piece. So I can take those two and I can delete those. Then I take another 11.5 by 11.5 square, place it over another part of my letter, select both of those and slice. So I can delete that, I can delete that, and there's my other piece. So when you piece those together, when you cut them out and piece them together, you just need to remember to line them up properly. And then I've got this final piece here, which is still too big, so I would place another square there and slice. Delete that. Delete that. Move that there, and then I've got my one remaining piece which I don't need to slice because it's what's left over, and there's my 4 pieces. So I would then cut those out. They all will fit within a 12 by 12 mat, and then cut them out on vinyl or whatever you're cutting them out on, and then just piece them together like a jigsaw. Let's have a look for some more questions. If I buy an SVG, say from Etsy, do I still have to clean it up when I upload it? That depends, Megan. That really depends on the quality of the SVG that you've purchased. If it's a good quality SVG, you do not have to clean it up. Sometimes you'll buy or download an SVG and it will have the SVG extension, but when you take it into Design Space, you will find that it is actually just a JPEG or a PNG and has been given the SVG extension. And the way that you know that is you would get a different screen. If you do get an SVG and when you open it up, it opens up to, I'll find, let me find, okay, so this is just a photo, but let's pretend that this is an SVG that you've purchased from, say, Etsy. If I take that into Design Space, if I get this screen here, where it's asking you to pick from simple, moderately complex, or complex, if you've purchased an SVG and you get this screen, then that SVG hasn't been created properly. You shouldn't get this screen at all if it's a real SVG. If it's a real SVG, let me go into one here. You'll know that it's a real SVG is when you take it in, you get this screen. So you're not being asked what kind of image it is, it just shows you the SVG and you can then go and save it. So that's how you know if you've got a real SVG. It's hit and miss on Etsy. Sometimes anybody can open up an Etsy shop and sell SVGs, but it's hard to find or hard to know who's going to be quality and who's not. There are some of the ones that I've looked at, they actually have sample files. So if they have a sample file, they're free. You just generally have to email them, ask them for their sample file, and they'll send it to you, and then you can download that one and cut it out. And if it works for you, then it's pretty certain that all their files are going to be good quality. So that's what I would suggest. Just make sure that you ask for a sample file to make sure that it works properly. How do you cut a square rectangle around your image to make weeding easier? Well, okay. Let's get out of this screen. And insert an image. Let's say I want to cut this guy. So I want to cut that one. I would need to take a square, place it around there, and then I would select both of those and select attach. and then what will happen is it will cut around that square, and then it will also cut your vinyl. So that's how I would do it. Hopefully that helped, Jane. What software do you need to support Design Space? You don't need any software to support Design Space. You can do a lot of what you need to do just in the program itself. If you want to create your own SVGs, then there are many programs you can use. Inkscape is the most popular, mainly because it's free. There is also Shortcuts a lot, which you can create SVGs. Make the Cut is another program that you can use to make SVGs. Illustrator, but now you're talking sort of serious money for Illustrator. But yeah, unless you really want to get really complicated, then most of what you want to do you can do in Design Space. If you're using text and you want to weld text and it's a system font, I tend to do that outside of Design Space. It's just easier because text in Design Space is kind of handled differently. So if I type a word in here, now I'm going to just get rid of all of this because I don't need it anymore. Go back to 100%. Oh, that's something that I wanted to show you. Say if you've zoomed right out and you've got something and you've moved your screen, and you, I'll go back in a little bit better. That's just a bit too ridiculous. So say you're here and you've zoomed out and you can't see the numbers and the letters at the top anymore. You don't have to use the bar or anything to I mean, you can go left and right and then come over here and go top and bottom. The quickest way to do this, so say you're over here somewhere and you want to get back all your numbers and letters, or yeah, X and Y, is just to click right here where at the moment it says 66%. Just click right there and it will take you back to 100%, and it will take you back to the very top left corner. So there's just a little tip. Now back to text. If you're using a system font, so I better go and use one of those. Now just wait for this to load. Say I want to use, let me find a nice cursive system font. Why don't I go with, let's go with brush script. So there's my word in a cursive font, and if I want to move those closer together so that I can weld them and cut them as one, I can go in here and I can use the letter spacing option, and that will bring them closer together. And in this particular case it worked quite well, but in some fonts when you do that, the letters don't overlap correctly, and what you then need to do is you actually have to go in and isolate the letters, and say I wanted this one to be a little bit further over here, I would have to do that. You don't have to do that if you create your text in, say, Inkscape. When you type a word that's in cursive, it connects all the letters up for you so that you can then just click weld and bring it into Design Space. You don't have to do this. So that's pretty much the only time that I would say go use Inkscape. That would be for text. Okay, I'm just reading your question, Quillen. I'm just not sure what you mean here. Taking a 3D image by taking two images and slicing it somehow to put one over the other. I might talk to Juniper about that one, and then maybe we can do a tutorial just for that, so that I can work out exactly what it is that you mean. How do you use layers the way that Gypsy could do? Oh, I think you mean you want to have more than one, like on the Gypsy you could have more than one tab open. You can't do that in Design Space. Sorry. Samantha, you want to know how you can cut intricate designs. Does that mean that when you cut them out they're not being cut neatly? If that's the case, then you really have to A, make sure you're using quality product that you're cutting with, and two, if say it's cardstock, if it's very small, then you need to go to the custom settings in Design Space. So move the dial on your Explore to Custom, go into Design Space. When you get to the cutting screen, you can change, you need to select from one of the different custom settings. A lot of people have success with cardstock intricate, so try that. You're right, April, you do need to check that your score lines have been set to score. That's if you have an SVG, so for example, the SVGs from, say, Dreaming Tree or SVG Cuts, or any of the ones where they have the little dash lines that are actually cut, I actually prefer to cut them rather than use the score tool, unless I'm using cardstock that has a white core, because I don't like seeing the white core once it's been cut. But if I'm using cardstock that the colour, the dye has gone right through the whole, right through the cardstock, so there's no white core, I prefer to leave it on, let the Explore cut those lines, because it just is easier to fold. If you want to though, you can replace those score lines. So you would go to the Insert Shapes button and select Score Line, and you would go and place that over the existing score lines. And obviously this only works if the lines are vertical or horizontal, or whether you can get the correct angle. But basically you would place those over your the existing score lines, make it the same size, and then you could then go and delete the existing score lines if you actually want to just have one long score line instead of the dashed lines. But as I said, I prefer to keep them as cut lines. And the other thing you must make sure that you do is, before you go to cut, is that make sure that the score lines have been attached to the actual cutting lines. If I go back to upload images, and I'll select one that I've already got here. Let's have a look at, let's see if we've got any score lines in this one. I don't think there are. I'm just looking for an image that's actually got some score lines in it. I don't know if they have either. I think this one does. Okay, so here's my SVG from Dreaming Tree for the lantern, and I'll place that on my canvas by selecting Insert Images, so you can see all the score lines here. So I tend to leave them as cut lines because I think they're neater. But if I click Go right now, you can see that it's been split onto two mats. One mat has just the score lines, and the other mat is the actual cutting line. So what we need to do is make sure that those two are attached. So I X out of there, select my object, go to the layers panel, and one tip that I found is if you are working with an image and the attach button is available, it means you need to click it. So click the attach button, and now when you press go, your score lines are where they should be. So that's, yeah, one thing that you have to remember to do is always attach your score lines. How do I see what font I've used after I've placed the word? Okie doke. Let's get rid of that. Add text. So long as you haven't welded, you will be able to go back. Let me do another one. Okay, I'm going to change this one to a different font. So there I've got two fonts, or two blocks of text. If I save that file and then come back in later and I want to know what I used, what you do is go to the layers panel. I want to know what this text here was, so I click on the little button there that shows my text, go up to the top right corner, click on the information button, and it tells me what font it was that I used. Now if I do it on this one, but say I had welded that, and I'll have to save this. And click save. And then I'm going to create a new one. Alright, now I'm going to go back and open the project that I just saved. So this is, let's say, another day. I've gone and I've opened up my project that I did the other day. So there is my project. If I go and click on this one now and look at the information icon, it doesn't tell me what the font is, and that's because I welded it. But on this one, because I didn't weld it, it still tells me what it is. So just remember, if you weld your text, you won't be able to go back and find out what font it was. But if you don't weld it, you can. So what some people do is before they go and weld text, they'll do a duplicate. So they'll just go down here to the duplicate. They'll keep one, and they can, you can hide that so that so it's not showing on your screen, but you know that you've always got that to go back and check what your text was, because if I would then go in and weld this one, I would have the same problem. I wouldn't be able to tell what text, what font that was. So that's how you find out what font you used. Bethany wants to know, how do you turn an image into an SVG cut file? That is done obviously outside of Design Space. Inkscape again is the most common program that people use to do that. I don't have time to show that today, but if you go to my blog, thenOncraftycrafter.com, I have done a tutorial on how to do that. So if you go to my blog, thenOncraftycrafter.com, and do a search for Inkscape, I think there are about 4 tutorials there, and one of those is how to turn a JPEG into an SVG. Danielle, yes, Windows 7 works. yes, you do need Adobe Flash at the moment. That's what Design Space uses. Whilst the system requirements say that Windows 7 is no longer supported, it still works. Because Microsoft doesn't support Windows 7 anymore, Cricut basically has to follow the same kind of thing. So, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. So yes, Windows 7 will work, and yes, you do need Adobe Flash. Can you do text change color of each letter? Print, then go back and cut. I'm not sure of what you actually mean, but let's undo this so that it's not welded. Undo. Okay, so here's some text. If you wanted, maybe this is what you mean, say you want each of these letters to be a different color. Yes, you can. I would go to the edit panel. I would isolate the letters so now they are individual letters. You can change the colors, then go back to layers, and you see you now have 4 different images. So I would go in here, click on one. Now there's that little bug that keeps happening in Design Space at the moment. See, I've got this letter selected and I've changed the color, but it's changed the color of the first one. That's a bug at the moment. So what you actually have to do is copy that. So I'm going to duplicate that letter, and then I should be able to, change the color of that letter. It's a crazy bug, but that's the only way to get around it, is to actually duplicate your image. So I would get rid of that one, and we'll see what happens with this one. We'll make that one, see how it's changed the capital T again? So annoying, but fixable. Get rid of that one, and I can change this. This one, I'll just go ahead and duplicate it. Get rid of that one, and then change the color. So now I've got 4 different colors. If you wanted to cut and print that, what you then do is align them how you want them, and then select them, and you would then flatten them if you want to do a print and cut. So I'll flatten. So what's actually going to happen is that will now be sent to your printer, but when it prints, it will print like that. When it goes to cut, it's still actually going to physically cut around each individual letter. If you don't want that to happen, you will need to flatten it onto something. So if I select a square, I'll push that to the back. This is so that you can see the text on the front. I'll select that square and I'll go move to the back. So now it's sitting on there. Now I need to change the color of this square to white, because white obviously doesn't print when you send it to your printer. So now I select all of that and flatten, and then when I send that to the printer, it will print out, and when it goes to the Explore, the only place that will be cut will be around that square, and the text will be printed. That was Amy, so hopefully that answered your question. Yeah, Sherry, it's really annoying when you weld it and you didn't realise that once you go and reopen that file, you won't be able to check what the font was. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions, and we've been going for a little while, and I'm not sure what the maximum live video time is. So we might close this for today. And if you think that this was a great, was a good idea, I'm happy to keep doing these. And do some more, and maybe we'll get the questions in advance so that I can go through, work out exactly what it is that you mean, and then I don't have to be trying to look at two different screens at the same time. So thank you guys for being here tonight. I hope your team won. I don't even know what sport it was that you were all watching. It's all golf to me. I told that to Juniper one day. It's all golf to me. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you next time. I'm going to close this one down now.